Insurgents. Creative Insurgents.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Creative Insurgents podcast,
where we are all about living a creative life according to your own rules.
Yay!
Yay!
So we're going to introduce our new guest here in just a minute, but Melissa, what's going on?
Well, I've been happily working in the Creative Sandbox, and I have this little piece. I've been sewing little tiny canvases together, and you can't, let's see if I can hold it in a way that you can actually see the whole thing.
There we go. Great. Yeah.
So I've been having fun, and I'm getting ready to do a presentation about my 10 rules for the Creative Sandbox with ukulele at Patty Dye's Design Your Life camp in Georgia in a couple weeks. So that's what's going on with me.
You're a world traveler.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I've got a couple of shows coming up. I'm doing some. There's an anthology of plays by Mormon playwrights that just came out a couple months ago, and I'm getting ready to do a series of readings from those plays. So should be pretty fun. Yep. Today's I'm very, very excited about today's main segment. Jason Horejs from Xanadu Gallery in Scottsdale, Arizona is joining us. Everybody say hi, Jason.
Hey everybody, good to be here. Thanks for having me, Corey.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. Jason mentioned that he runs Xanadu Gallery. Awesome thing that you should know about Jason, he opened the gallery on September 10th, 2001. And he's a pretty good story about that. Jason's father is a professional painter. He grew up in the art world, and he's been traveling all over the country and all over the world helping artists learn how to sell their art, both online and offline. And he's got a very interesting book called Starving to Successful, The Fine Artist Guide to Getting into Galleries and Selling More Art. You can pick that book up at Amazon. And he also, because everything there wasn't enough, also runs red.blog.com, where he talks about the business of being an artist. So, Jason, thank you very much for being here, and tell us a little bit about the story of your gallery opening.
Yeah, so I've been in the business for about 20 years now. As you mentioned, my father's an artist, so really I've been in the business my whole life. And to be honest with you, I'm the oldest of my parents' 9 children.
Wow.
And so I got to grow up during the starving artist phase of my father's career. And I decided at a very early age that I did not want to be an artist. This seemed like such a hard way to make a life, and I watched my father in the studio for long hours, and sometimes months could go by without any kind of sales. And so I never thought that would really be the path for me. But by the time I was an adolescent, he was really beginning to experience some success in his career. He was showing in multiple galleries around the country, and I got to start traveling with him to gallery openings and shows, and I really fell in love with what was happening there and loved seeing people come in to interact with the artwork and meet my father. So when I was 17, I went and got a job at a big Western art gallery in Scottsdale, and just kind of started learning the business from the ground up. And then in 1998, I got married, and as young couples often will, my wife and I started talking about our future and what business we wanted to be in, and my wife had a degree in public relations, but she also loves the visual arts. She'd interned in an art museum, and it just seemed clear to us that we were going to be in the art business together, and so we decided, that being the case, we wanted to have our own gallery, and started working toward that. And it took us several years, and then as Corey mentioned, we finally get ready to launch, and kind of putting all the artwork together in our gallery space, and we finished this all up on September 10th, 2001. And of course, everyone knows what happens the next day, and you just really have to wonder, wow, what have we just done? We've made this huge commitment, and a huge investment in getting a business off the ground, and you'll all remember that we didn't know if there was even going to continue to be an art business after September 11th. It just seemed like the world had really come to a standstill, and it was the next day, our entire grand opening day, September 11th, we didn't have a single person through the door, but the next day we had someone come in and actually buy a piece of artwork, and we realized that, okay, art is so important and such a fundamental part of what people do in their lives, that no matter what's going on, they're going to continue to find great works of art. And that was the case September 11th. It's been the case through the last, the downturn in the economy. We're all still here. We're all still making art and selling art, and people are still buying art. So it's, certainly a hard way to learn some of those lessons, but that's what we've all got to go through.
Jason, it reminds me of September. I remember what I was doing on September 10th. I was actually exhibiting my art in a street festival, and I had my very first ketubah print, Jewish marriage contract print, in that display, and got my first gallery as a result of being in that show. And I remember somebody coming around and asking me about a particular piece. It wasn't a ketubah, it was another piece that had the lyrics to a song written by a woman who'd been killed in the Holocaust. And she was asking me about the piece, and I sang the song for her. Then she went on her merry way, and after September 11th, she came back and bought the piece, because my singing the song so impressed her and so moved her, and it felt like something that she needed to help heal, and it was so powerful for her, and it was really a result of that connection with me. And September 11th was a big catalyst for her to buy that piece.
Absolutely.
So there you go.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. Some of the relationships that we formed with artists and with buyers in the days and weeks and months right after September 11th are somehow still some of the deepest and richest relationships that we have. There was just something about us all being, focused and together, and created some very powerful connections. And certainly it was a tragic situation, but if anything positive came out of it, it was that ability that we had to work together and build relationships and get through it.
Wow, Melissa, I'd never heard that story before. That's a good one. Wow. That's powerful.
Yeah, it shows you that we have this idea. I mean, of course, I'm an evangelist for the importance of art and meaning as a way to give our lives meaning as creators and as consumers of art. And there's often this idea that, oh, how can we possibly create when terrible tragedies are happening? It's so selfish, yada yada yada. But the reality is, it feeds us and it feeds the people who are benefiting from what we create, right? So. Because there are tragedies like 9/11 and so many other horrible things going on in the world, that's more reason to create your art.
I couldn't agree more.
It creates so much meaning, just like what you were saying about the connections that developed as a result of that tragedy for you have been so powerful and strong.
One of the things that maybe it has helped your success is your willingness to embrace new ideas and the internet. And I love on the Xanadu Gallery website, artists can go and sell art directly to your collectors through your site using your platform as an e-commerce platform. And can you talk a little bit about how that idea came about and how that's worked out for you?
Sure. Yeah. From even before we launched the business, I always felt I have a love of technology and computers and the internet, and so even as we were getting ready to launch our business, I kind of started thinking about how that might impact. And we were one of the first galleries, I think, to tie our inventory into our website, where anything new that came into the gallery instantly came up on the website. If it sold, it went down, and we had our entire inventory online. And we've just always tried to kind of build off of that. And it was a realization several years ago that even though my physical display space, the gallery space, is limited, I only have so many square feet of show space and wall space, but my online gallery didn't need to have those same kind of limitations. And so we worked and kind of went through and revamped our site and built an interface for artists to be able to create a page on our site and upload. I do still review the artwork that's coming onto our site and hand review each image that's coming up, but it's allowed us to really open up the site, and it's just been a kind of a win-win-win. It's a win for us because we get a broader range of artists, and frankly, it helps our search engine optimization to have so much artwork there. And that wasn't even something that we were really thinking about when we began. It helps the artists because they get to reach our audience, and it helps our collectors because they now have a broad diversity of artists. And we structured a little differently than how we show work in the gallery. We only take a 20% commission on sales that happen online, but it's great because I can sell artwork from artists who maybe have never even set foot in my gallery and certainly aren't showing the work in the gallery, to collectors who have maybe never set foot in the gallery, and it's helped us to create a lot of great relationships and sales that we wouldn't have otherwise had.
So there's like around 300 websites now that are saying that they sell original art on the web. Most of them are web only. There are very few galleries that are following the model that you are, of selling their art over the web. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think that a big part of it is just the intensity of capital that's required to build a website that can handle it. I think that maybe we have a little bit of an advantage in that I do have some personal interest in that, and so I'm willing to make the investment. And I think also that it's just hard sometimes for a gallery to make that kind of investment without being certain that they're going to see a return on the investment. What I've learned is that it can take real time. It's taken us 12 years to really ramp up to the sales where they are now, and even now they're only 10 to 15% of my total sales. It's not an overwhelming percentage, but boy, it's a percentage I wouldn't want to give up. And I see that business growing substantially as I see collectors more and more willing to buy artwork sight unseen, having only seen it online, and so I think this is a critical time for the gallery business. The industry is changing. Artists have the ability to reach out to collectors directly, and I feel if the galleries don't figure it out and don't start taking advantage of those new opportunities, they're going to have a much harder time making sales. It's not the same environment, certainly, that it has been, for 100 years.
Totally. Go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah,
I have so many questions. Go ahead.
I have a question about what you were just saying about people being willing to buy work online without having seen the actual piece. And I know as a Katuba artist specifically, that's that part of my work, because I do all kinds of other work as well. But I periodically do get questions from brides and grooms about, well, I don't want to buy this without seeing it in person. Is there a store I can go to, or can you send me a sample, etc.? And I'm just wondering, from your experience, the internet is still so new. How has that changed from your perspective as a gallery owner, people getting more willing to buy work online? What's your experience with that?
Yeah, the surprising thing about that is if I were to just kind of try and imagine how the internet business would work with art, I would imagine, okay, it's going to be the next generation of buyers that really are comfortable interacting online and making purchases. But I've actually found that that's not necessarily the only case. I have some buyers who are definitely of generation. How am I going to say this without offending someone?
Buyers of a certain age.
Buyers of a certain age. A certain age that's greater than what you might expect are becoming more and more comfortable online. I'm seeing more of those users on places like Facebook and Google Plus, and I'm seeing them having a greater willingness. I think that it's as they've become accustomed to buying everything through Amazon or iTunes, it's only a matter of time before they're comfortable enough to spend higher dollars on things like artwork. I think it definitely helps in our situation where we already, we're well established and we have a physical and internet presence. I think that helps reassure a little bit for their purchase. And I have a very liberal return policy. If you buy something online from me and it doesn't work for you, you package it back up, ship it out. We will refund the full purchase price plus the shipping. And I kind of try and take the risk out of that process for the buyer. And interestingly, in the years that we've been selling online, we've really been doing it about 5 or 6 years now. I've only really ever had 2 or 3 things that have been returned. So from my perspective, it's not really that big a risk to offer a full refund policy.
Yeah.
Do you find that people ask you just a bazillion questions before they make a purchase online?
No. In fact, what the typical process for a sale is, it's not emails and inquiries on the website. It's come in the morning, open up the email, and there's an order that somebody's made a purchase.
Yep.
So it's just, you know, if you give them enough information up front, they feel comfortable making the purchase.
Cool.
Yeah, I'd encourage anybody out there to go take a look at the Xanadu Gallery website and see how they have their e-commerce set up. You know, whether you go through them or you set something up on your own site, it's really smart to have that option if you're selling your art.
Yeah, and it's easy. You know, we've gone through several different e-commerce providers. Initially, we spent a lot of money setting up an in-house, you know, processing with merchant services and all of that. And eventually, I went through that and another option, and now I'm using PayPal exclusively because it's the simplest. And you know, even though it's not great in some ways, you know, you do run into some issues every now and again. Yep. But from an artist perspective, it's certainly going to be the straightest path to adding e-commerce to your website.
Yeah, Minnie, you had a question.
Oh yeah, Jason, I'd like to know if an artist would be better off being physically in your gallery as well as being online, because you're really unique. Like most galleries are either or, but if you're both, is
Sure.
it better? Like,
well, you know, my top selling artists are all in-gallery artists. You know, there's just no doubt that, you know, I'm in a location that gets a lot of art interested traffic, and we do a lot of business. As I mentioned, online is 10 to 15% of sales depending on the year. And so, you know, obviously still having that physical presence is important in terms of sales. We're not to a completely online world yet, certainly.
yeah. And especially when art is really big, like huge.
Yeah.
You know, then you can't really do online as well, because if it's taller than your head, I mean, you know.
Yeah, but I have sold, you know, just this spring in April, we sold a painting. I can't remember the exact dimensions, but it was something like a 5 by 7 foot canvas, you know, $12,000 sale that was completely transacted online. The client encountered it online. The transaction occurred online. The only thing that physically happened was that we had someone pick it up from the artist studio and deliver it to the client. So there is no limit. I mean, for heaven's sake, we just saw a $0.5 million transaction happen on Amazon Art. So you know, there can be little doubt that the internet is certainly in the future of the art business.
Yeah. So I run a private Facebook group for some of my clients. And I asked them how many of you have done a transaction, sold a piece of art on your website from somebody that you've never met before. And I think there were, you know, in the group of about 100 that I surveyed, 10 of them had sold a piece of art that they had never to somebody that they had never met. And these are all early to mid-career artists. They're not really established yet, so it's only going to get more and more.
Yeah, and it is interesting in terms of successful sales of art online. I think there's still a kind of a life cycle for an artist where you're probably going to be able to sell better online if you do have a name and a reputation that you've established through shows or galleries. But I mean, it's a lot like the music industry in that way, you know, where iTunes changed things dramatically, but still, it's, even though it's not the label system anymore, it's still the famous artists who are cleaning up online.
Yep, absolutely. So that brings up a good question. So have you spent much time working with artists who maybe have a strong online presence of their own?
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, a number of the artists that I work with have active websites. They're transacting business online, and that's led to some problems where, you know, well, where did this customer come from? Did they encounter the artwork in a gallery, or did they meet the artist directly first? Have they been to the gallery? And you know, then there can be a little bit of tension that's created there because an artist obviously has an incentive to sell directly because they make then the full commission. I think a lot of galleries are really terrified of this whole concept because you just can't see how to plug the holes to keep the clients coming to the gallery anymore. And so I've seen some pretty draconian measures by galleries where they're, in their contracts, they're asking artists to completely remove their website from the internet. I will not interact with my clients. All the business has to go through the gallery, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's exactly the wrong approach to take. It's, inevitably you're just going to be losing artists, and I think that also ignores the fact that those transactions and sales that artists are creating online, well, that's creating a new fan of that artist's work, and maybe they're going to come into your gallery a year from now to see the work in person and make a purchase that you would not have otherwise had. So
I have followed artists for months or years online, and then when I travel to a city where that artist has something, has a work for on display, I will go to the gallery and see it.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you handle working with artists who have maybe a strong online following?
I just try to have very open and frank conversations. My expectation is that if a client encounters the artwork in my gallery and we've put effort into interacting with that client and making a sale, my expectation and hope would be that the artist is going to respect that. And even if the client, what will sometimes happen is a client will see the work in a gallery and then say, well, if I buy this directly from the artist, maybe I can get a better deal. And so they'll try and go around the gallery to accomplish that. And in the short term, I can certainly understand the temptation that an artist would have. An artist could say, well, I'll give this client 20% off on the piece. I'm still making 30% more than I would have. Well, in reality, it's 60% more than I would have made, and everybody's happy. But that's a short-sighted, because eventually, the word gets around that the gallery finds out, and now you've lost that relationship and don't have future sales from them. So, it's just everybody's got to think about what's going to be best in the long term for everyone involved.
Yeah. Maybe go ahead, Minnie.
Yeah, I was just thinking, so if it's hanging in your gallery physically, then you have a lot of control over that.
Sure.
You can see it, and it's hanging right there, so you're not going to let it go.
Yeah.
Online sales.
Yes, although, for example, with sculptors, they may have multiple castings of a particular piece, and even sometimes an artist will have paintings in a series that are similar enough that a client might buy it directly and circumvent the gallery. So it's definitely a challenge, and it's just something we all have to figure out. It's not, it doesn't have to be the end of the world unless you make it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what you bring, what a gallery owner brings to an artist who already has maybe an established reputation or an established online following. Like, why would they want to do business with you as a gallery owner?
Sure, and that's a great question. And I actually think that there are some artists out there who don't necessarily, maybe a gallery isn't the right fit for them. If they love the prospect of getting out on the road and doing shows and interacting with the public, if they love handling the business side of things and handling the online sales, we live in an art market that allows that today. There are artists who can be very successful without ever having set foot in a gallery. Mm-hmm. But what I find is that the artists that I'm working with, they would rather be in the studio creating and focusing on that part of that side of the business. And what I do as a gallery owner is basically try and free them up to allow them to do as much of that as possible while I handle the marketing and the sales logistics and the promotion of the work. And we kind of do what we're best at. I couldn't paint a painting to save my life. Well, a lot of these artists couldn't make a sale to save their lives, and so we are the perfect
it's a match made in heaven.
Exactly. And I think that you talk to a lot of artists, and even though they're excited about the prospects of being able to sell online and being able to have direct connections with collectors, they're even more excited about the idea of a good gallery. And I put that in huge exclamation point good gallery, one that's good to work with and a good team player. And that's becoming harder to find, unfortunately. But they would still like to have that relationship and that gallery. And there's just some prestige that comes for an artist showing in a gallery in an art destination. You know, it is very powerful for an artist to be able to say, I'm showing in a gallery in Scottsdale, Arizona, or Santa Fe, or New York City, or Chicago, and so that's the opportunity that galleries have to remain relevant. But as I said, there's some challenges in that regard as well.
Yeah.
So Jason, I'm curious, how do you select the artists that you show in your brick and mortar gallery?
Sure, and it's a little bit of a dynamic process. You know, the first thing I'm looking for, the gallery is an extension of my taste and interests. You know, that's kind of my opportunity to be creative, and so I'm looking for artists that excite me and interest me, and that I'm going to be able to do a good job of promoting their work because I believe in what they're doing. But then I also have to take into consideration not everything that I like is going to be marketable. And, you know, in a lot of ways, when I decide that I'm going to take an artist on, I'm making an investment in them. I'm going to be investing wall space or pedestal space, advertising and promotional dollars, and I've got to feel like we're going to be able to see a return on that investment over time. So, you know, I have to the best of my ability, I have to ascertain what my clients are going to be interested in and try and match that up. And then, you know, I also just am looking for artists that I feel I can build a good relationship with. This business is very much about the partnership that I have with my artists, and so I've got to feel like we're going to be able to work well together. And I'm happy to say that some of the artists that I represent are very good friends now. You know, they almost feel like family members, and that I think is ultimately the goal when you're building a relationship.
What would you say to an artist who was interested in having their work in a gallery like yours? What are your recommendations to them to prepare themselves so that they are in that position of being ready to be represented by a gallery like yours?
Sure. Well, I think first and foremost, they should absolutely read my book, and I say that with all humility that I can muster. But seriously, that's exactly the question that I was answering in my book, is what do you need to do to get prepared? And it's some work, you know, And let's be clear, there are varying levels of galleries. It's a different question if you're trying to get into a gallery in Soho in New York than it is if you're trying to get to a gallery in Scottsdale or maybe Bend, Oregon. You know, it's going to take a different level of preparation. But the key things that I would focus on are, first of all, quality, the quality of the work that you're producing and the presentation of that work. Second of all, quantity. It's just critical in the art market today that you have a good body of work available. You know, it's a numbers game. You've got to have enough work of high quality in enough venues to get enough eyeballs on that work to reach the percentage of people that are going to actually make a purchase. And so, you know, artists need to find ways to efficiently and effectively spend their time in the studios creating and you know, eliminating distractions so that they can produce a good body of work. And then, you know, you've also got to figure out things like pricing. You know, it's critical that you get the right price point for your work. And I would submit that the majority of artists out there who are listening to this today, their work is probably underpriced. And they're afraid to raise the prices, and I can understand that. But when it comes time to work with galleries, if your price points are too low, it doesn't make financial sense for a gallery to represent you because they can't sell enough of it. This is not enough of a volume business to sell low-priced work. I'd rather be selling a $10,000 piece than a $200 piece. And certainly there are points in between that, but if you're undervalued and underpriced compared to other artists who are doing similar work, it's going to be very difficult to find good representation. So those are kind of the starting points. And then there's all the other stuff, preparing portfolios and getting your biography sharpened up and all those kind of things. But those are secondary to the work itself and getting enough of the work together.
Oh, I had a quick question.
Yeah.
Oh, just about pricing. I heard that galleries do the pricing for you, and you shouldn't do any pricing yourself if you're an artist. That's what I heard. Is that true?
That is only 99.9% incorrect. Well, here's the, and actually it is an interesting point. You will find definitely as you begin building relationships with galleries and working with them that there's going to be an ongoing dialogue and conversation about pricing, and as you know your demand starts to increase, and that you're going to have conversations about raising the price. But especially when you're starting to get out there and starting to talk to your first galleries, when you're just first looking for representation, it behooves you to have done some research on the market, to have a good idea of what your prices should be, and to even set those prices in your portfolio and have a price list. Because if you walk into a gallery and you say, "Here's my work, I'd love for you guys to show me," and they say, "Oh, we like it. How much is it? What are the price points?" and you say, "I don't know. What do you think they should be?" That's sending a very clear message to the gallery that you don't have a lot of sales experience, you're not very well established, and so it's far better to have a price point in mind and then start a discussion about maybe it could be a little higher or a little bit lower, but better to come in with prices set on the work.
So Jason, we're pretty close to time, so I just want to ask you to speculate. Over the next few years, say 5 to 10 years from now, where do you see the gallery world and how artists and the internet are all gonna? Where's that all going? What do you think?
Yeah, I can make a guess just as well as the next guy, and from my experience, I think that we're going to see several things. We're going to see fewer galleries. The market is becoming more competitive, and as some of that business moves away from the physical galleries directly to the artists or to online galleries, it's just inevitable that it's going to be more difficult for galleries to keep the doors open if they're not being aggressive, and I think if they're not adapting to the online situation. So fewer galleries. I think you're also going to see more galleries that are charging a fee to display your work. They're described by some as vanity galleries. I don't like that title because I think we're going to see that starting to happen in a way that actually works for the artist, where it's not just a case of I'm going to pay to have my work out in the world. And I say that again because I think that if artists are able to sell directly to collectors, and they're able to have their whole business going, but they still want some physical representation, or they want a place where people can go to see their work, it only makes sense to me that there's going to be some businesses that say for a reasonable fee, we'll give you that space, and we'll handle some of the logistics of the sale. But since we can't count on selling the work ourselves anymore, since all of our artists are selling it directly, we've got to have some way to keep the business going. So I think that's going to be certainly a trend. And then I think that the galleries that do remain, the traditional gallery, the consignment gallery, if you will, it is going to require a lot more savvy and technical savvy in reaching out to clients in new ways and focusing on creating experiences, because that is the one thing that a physical gallery still really has that they can offer that is very difficult to replicate online, is that experience of discovering new work and having a chance to come to a gallery opening and meet the artist and have some wine and have some cheese and all that kind of stuff. And so that's where certainly we as a gallery are focusing more and more on that. And I think that's what's going to be required to kind of going forward. And I think the future is bright for artists. I think that it is a competitive marketplace and it's hard to get heard. But once you do start to establish a following and use some of the tools that are available to you, it's we have more art buyers out there than we've ever had before. Mm-hmm. And more markets more venues where we can get that work to them. So it's an exciting time to be an artist.
Awesome. Well, Jason Horejs, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with us on Google Hangouts and share your knowledge and wisdom.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. I'm going to buy your book.
Thanks, guys. I'll look forward to your order.
All right, take care.
Thanks.
So in today's quick tip, I want to talk a little bit about WooCommerce. WooCommerce is... Woo!
Woo!
I'm sure they get that all the time. I'm sure they sit around their office and go, woo! So readers of The Abundant Artist know that I'm a big fan of WordPress, and that if you want an artist website, that WordPress is a good way to do it. It gives you the control that you need, the flexibility that you need. There is some challenges. You do have to learn a little bit more, but ultimately you can have the control and the flexibility that you need to build the right website for you and your art. In the main segment today, we were talking with Jason Horejs about e-commerce and about setting up e-commerce on your site so that people can just come to your site, find the art they want, click on it, whip out their credit card, pay for it, and you never talk to them. That's sort of the ideal situation. So if you are running a WordPress website, WooCommerce is a plugin that will create an e-commerce experience for you, and WooCommerce integrates with all kinds of credit card payment systems, PayPal, different payment systems from around the world. Also, WooCommerce has some really neat extensions that handle things like automatically calculating shipping for you. So if you're in the United States and you use FedEx or UPS to deliver your art, there are some extensions for WooCommerce that will automatically calculate that shipping based on the buyer's shipping address. So you don't have to go back and forth on the phone and get out your calculator and punch out your figure out shipping costs. It handles it all for you. So. And it's pretty easy to get set up. Some of the additional extensions, like the shipping calculator, are a little bit more work. But the main plugin itself is free, and then the shipping extensions and some of the other stuff.
Free.
Yeah, it costs anywhere between $50 and $80 for those extensions, but it handles it beautifully. I've implemented it on a number of artist websites, and everybody's very happy with the results. So, yay! E-commerce, yay WooCommerce. Go check it out.
Yay, woo!
Until next time, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.